Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello, and welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Gennari. Today, we are speaking with Caroline Holke, and she is the Drink Less Coach. Thank you so much for joining us, Caroline. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I want to introduce Caroline because she's got a really interesting topic that I think a lot of us women can relate to and maybe benefit from. So Caroline had a pretty good life on paper, happily married, 2 kids, leadership position in corporate marketing, good friends and family, but she wasn't quite happy and knew that it started with her relationship with alcohol. Today, she is a drink less coach. She helps women get rid of the shitty parts of drinking. And this doesn't mean that they quit drinking, but that they can create a life that they wouldn't dream of numbing out of. Most people focus on what to do to cut back on their drinking. Caroline has a skill for helping her clients tease out what thoughts are driving their drinking in the first place. She teaches her clients how to apply critical thinking skills to their own thinking, because addressing the habit at the root cause is what helps create sustainable change. Very interesting. I love it. So let's dive into this topic because it's something that I think we all question a little bit, as mom, as entrepreneur, oh, I'll have a glass of wine to kind of unwind down at the end of the night, and maybe 2.
Right.
And well, then you wake up and you feel kind of shitty.
Yeah. I mean, and look at what all the messages that we receive through our friends, family, parents, TV, movies. I mean, all of it. It's like,
oh yeah,
everybody comes home and has a glass of wine or a bottle,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and it's those weeknight drinking things, got some friends over, they're hanging out, we're talking, and you're mindlessly drinking. That's the part where I feel like we get caught up in it. It's like, you're not counting, oh, I've had 3 glasses of wine. Oh, I've had 2 mixed drinks. Like, you're not really counting it up. You're just like, you just feel really bad at the end of the day.
Or the next morning.
Oh, yeah. So tell me, what led you down this path? I'm fascinated.
Yeah. So I'll start from like the beginning, I would say.
Yeah.
I was raised in a society that, I mean, everybody was big. They were all big drinkers. And it's not like these terrible things happened to me. I mean, my parents loved me. They still love me, It was everybody was having a good time. And I think that's what it is. That was the message that I received is, in order to have a good time, drinking was involved. And, to be sophisticated, to be grown up, to be whatever, to have a good time, drinking was involved.
Yeah.
And I definitely absorbed that message. No question. Went through college. Of course, college is typically it's a heavy drinking stage, time of life for sure. And my drinking definitely cut back quite a bit when I had children and, kind of running around with them and all that stuff. I think that is pretty typical. It's just like the energy involved with these little creatures.
Right. Exactly.
Now, I will say that I do hear a lot of people that will say, to your point earlier, like, I just need something to relax at the end of the day. Like, I'm tired.
Right.
And I think that's independent of life stage.
Right.
But I know that for me in general, there were a couple kind of milestone moments for me. My brother died by suicide.
Sorry.
Thank you. I had been dealing with some significant health issues myself. Then my husband was having some health issues. It was just like, it's not one thing, and there's a bunch of different things. So the foundation is everybody drinks,
right?
Drink to have fun. You layer on this stuff about, it also helps to relax.
Right.
And then these additional stressors. And all of a sudden I found that I was just drinking more than I intended to, more often than I wanted.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting when you get to that point, because I mean, nobody would say that I have a drinking problem or that I had a drinking problem. In fact, a lot of people, think that it's like everything that I've done is just kind of dumb.
Right. Right.
I had not been drinking for almost 2 years, and my stepfather didn't even realize it. So like,
oh, wow.
just as an indicator. But I knew, right. Like I knew that I felt like I was driving with the emergency brake on.
Okay.
So I continued to get promoted at work and, do projects and have successful relationships and everything. But I knew internally that things were just kind of off. Right. And so one of the things that I say is that you don't have to wait until you have a drinking problem per se to get help with your drinking. Right. Like, and to like have a personal problem with the consequences of your drinking.
Right. Absolutely.
And so it may sound a little nuanced. It may sound a little whatever, but to me that made sense. And there was, there were a number of events that I was like, ooh, that doesn't feel good. I don't want to do that again, kind of thing. And I think like everything came to a head for me. I was at a work meeting. We were in London. It was a big night. Everybody was out. Everybody was drunk. And I'm telling this story specifically because it's work related, and I like kind of your messaging regarding like what we do as women. Yeah. And this is actually the first time I've shared this on a podcast, so I'm going to say this. Okay. There was a male colleague who started hitting on me, and it was late night, and I pushed him away and everything, but it was still one of those things where I woke up the next morning and I was like, this is not cool. Like, I need to make sure that I definitely have my wits about me. I was fine. Nothing happened again. Yeah. But, what if I had that extra shot? What if I had, like then the brain starts going to all the what ifs, all that catastrophizing, right? Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, this guy continues to get promoted, and I'm certainly not going to tell anybody at work, heaven forbid, even though HR says, oh, you should say this stuff, whatever. I was like, I don't buy that. But yeah. Yeah. And that next morning I woke up and I said, that's not cool. Well, okay. It was late morning. Yeah. I woke up and, and I downloaded a book. And I read that on the way home from London. I started kind of doing my own research. I started, just kind of tuning into some things that I could do. I forgot to mention an important part. My brother had been in rehab. He'd been in rehab since I was in high school, basically the first times that he'd gone through. So I was very familiar with the AA model of abstinence only. So I knew that, and I also knew that where I was, that it wasn't appropriate for AA. I felt like they would laugh me out. Right. And so I started listening to podcasts and reading books and just kind of tuning into the things that are available. And I found a coach who was talking about stop over drinking. And I said, ding, 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 that's it. Yeah. Like, I don't want to stop drinking. I just want to stop the overing part.
Right. Well, and that's what I love your topic as the drink less coach. You're not the, go into complete, and utter like abstinence from drinking and, we're going to totally get rid of it. That's not your point. Your point is stop numbing yourself. Right. And stop putting yourself in predicaments. And I think as women, and this is where, I have been in those predicaments as well, work-related function, everybody's drinking, and, your inhibitions come down. And here's where it becomes tricky is if I'm drinking as a woman and a man is hitting on me, I may not have the same sensibilities to be able to walk away. Like I'm probably going to be a little slower in my reaction time. Something bad could happen to me.
Yep.
I don't have my wits about me. I don't have that, guard up that says, hey, this isn't right. Your inhibitions are lowered too. And even if you don't do anything with that, that hitting on you phase, it's enough if you're even engaging in it that the rumors could start, and if something were to happen, God forbid somebody takes advantage of you as a woman, right there you lose your defense of, well, hey, I was intoxicated, and all of a sudden it's judged harshly on the women, even more so, I would say, than the men.
That it's our fault.
Yeah, that we let them on. We asked for it. We were drinking. We weren't really pushing them away the way we could have. There wasn't a hard no, whatever that is. And it just puts yourself into predicaments. And I think that's where I can really get behind this whole idea, because I've seen it over and over and over again in these
absolutely.
Especially with people who travel. I was just having this conversation the other day with somebody, and it's like, golly, like when you travel for work, you see how, how do I say this nicely? You see infidelity right in front of you, and it's just you people just don't talk about it, right? It's what happens wherever stays wherever. And it's a terrible mindset. But at the same time, alcohol is typically involved in those decisions. So, if you can pull yourself out of that over drinking phase, have a glass of wine and then stop there. And then, you have your wits about you. You can make, good functional decisions for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of people believe that they need to, I was coaching somebody just last week about how a lot of the networking and stuff occurs after the meetings. And you're at dinner, you're at the bar, you're wherever, and a lot of the learning does occur there. Yeah. And I agree with that to a certain degree. Yes. My position is, what does it matter what's in the glass?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Nobody's asking you, hey, is there vodka in their club soda?
Right.
Right.
Totally.
It could just be club soda.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
100%.
Totally.
So, you talk about, you can still have fun minus the drinking. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I have more fun. I am less worried that I'm going to say something wrong, or that I'm going to, whatever. I know for sure that when I say something wrong, I'm just saying something wrong. Nobody's going to come back and say, oh, you were drunk. Because I wasn't.
Right. Like, you're less likely to make an ass out of yourself.
Well, or if I'm acting silly, I'm just acting silly.
Right.
That legitimately is me. It's not because I'm drunk. So, so yeah, I have felt that it is easier for me when I'm not drinking, when I'm drinking less. I know for sure that so often I used to believe that it was a connector. That, late nights and my girlfriends and I were, we'd be out and have that last bottle of wine, and we're sharing it and telling our deep, dark secrets. Well, I mean, if nobody can really remember them, does that really,
the secret stays within you, I guess.
Yeah. It doesn't really count.
Yeah, I know for sure. I think so many times, through the years of times where I'm like, probably could have stopped after that one, but the next one, that's the one that did me in, whether it made me act a little stupid, or it was the one that caused the worst hangover, there's health things, like I'm getting older, and, we're all aging, there's so many health benefits to cutting back on alcohol. The calories, number one, that's for sure. The calories are significant. The sugar, the amount of sugar that's in alcohol, that's what really does you in the next day for the hangover, is that, you're on a huge sugar rush, and then the next day you are without sugar, and now you feel like crap.
Yeah, it's the dehydration that really does everybody. And I think particularly for women, because we have more body fat, so there's less, we have less water in our system, less hydration in our system to begin with. And so it can impact us even more. And then you add the aging on.
Yeah.
And so that becomes, it's more dehydrating, basically.
I teach an alcohol awareness class for my company. We provide event staff and security for large venues. And one of the certifications that we have for all of our staff is called TEAM, which is Techniques in Effective Alcohol Management. And it really helps me and our staff to understand how to deal with somebody who is intoxicated, and then also how to see that, somebody who's having certain things, whether it's slurring words or, problems with stability, it may not be alcohol at all. It could be something medical. And so it just kind of teaches us to be aware of what those signs and symptoms are of intoxication, and then also to address them in a productive way, because, not everybody who's drinking is going to be receptive to suggestions on how to behave. And so, it really helps us. But learning that is important, because you start learning, like, as somebody who's 21 versus somebody who's 51, you would think the 21-year-old is going to have better ability to metabolize alcohol, but it's not true. The 51-year-old who has a higher tolerance is going to be able to metabolize alcohol better, but it's not true the 21-year-old will, because our livers start to take a major toll over the years.
Yeah.
And so, everything from our liver, our skin, our blood, our brain, all of it, it really kind of starts to make a big impact in our lives.
Absolutely. I mean, and there are studies that are now showing the connection with cancer too.
Oh, wow. That's scary.
There's some countries in Europe that are contemplating including, have you seen, it's not as much in the US, but in other places where they've got those pretty dire pictures on cigarettes.
Yeah.
So there's consideration of including that kind of warning on alcohol in some of the Scandinavian countries. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So what benefits have you seen in cutting back on drinking?
Well, getting rid of the shitty parts. Absolutely. So benefits, I would say, I do feel like I'm much more connected when I go out and when I'm with people, because I'm with people. I'm not thinking about when the waiter's going to come back and fill the glass. I'm not thinking about, I haven't kind of, I'm not numbed out. I'm there and I'm present. And I remember the conversation the next day. And if I don't remember it, that's okay. I'm not supposed to remember every single detail. That's fine. That is, I guess, one thing that came up to me. My kids would say, "Oh, well, I told you last night," or something like that. And it was a little bit hazy. Now, when they tell me that, I'm like, well, I'm 53. So whatever. I can't remember everything. Or you probably told me when I had my phone in my hand and you didn't really want me to know. Right. Like they know, these kids know this.
Yes.
So I would love to say that I've lost weight. I have not, but
yeah. Well, I hear you.
There's also the age thing in there, but whatever. I probably would have gained more. Okay. How about that?
Right.
I just feel better. I just feel better. I really do. And, I will say that in the beginning, I really considered it a superpower when I would go out to work, when I would have work happy hours and stuff. Yeah. Because it's really clear when you're the fly on the wall, or not the fly on the wall, but when you're more observant of what's happening, everybody starts getting sloppy pretty quickly, actually. And they lose the ability to connect the dots. Whereas when you still are totally with it, when you're still totally like seeing everything for what it is, then it's so easy. It's like, ooh, that's really smart. I'm like, yeah. I mean, this is my advantage here. So.
Yeah. So tell me, what are the other steps to getting rid of the shitty parts of drinking? Because I like how you say that, because it's so accurate. But tell me what steps you take to get rid of those parts of drinking.
Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't, like, before I get into that, I will say that I thought about that phrasing intentionally, because the shitty parts of drinking are different for everybody.
Right.
Like for some people, they can have a glass of wine and they're totally fine. For some people, they can have 2 glasses of wine and they're totally fine. Everybody's going to be a little bit different.
Right.
Some people will say, I only want to drink on the weekends. I don't want to drink during the week, or I don't want to drink as a response to stress.
Yeah.
So it's going to be different for everybody. I'm not the oracle that says you should drink, whatever. I that's way too much responsibility. That's not my deal.
Right.
But I believe that everybody does know what's right for them. It's just kind of buried. And so getting into that inner wisdom, getting into, kind of unlocking that part is what I can help my clients do. But you asked what the steps are. So first and foremost, there are some tactics that we utilize, some strategies and some tactics that we do. And that is, we plan out what we're going to drink 24 hours in advance. The reason for that is because we're utilizing the prefrontal cortex, the executive part of our brain, rather than responding to an urge, which is always coming from our primitive brain. So I like to make fun of our cat, Ernie, I think he was in the background a little while ago, but Ernie loves having his treats, and he normally gets them after dinner. Well, during COVID, we were all here. We all ate meals together. Ernie was a little confused. He's like, well, you guys are here. So do I get a treat after breakfast and after lunch and after all the snacks? And so he developed a habit too, as did we, right? So he responds to that urge just like we do.
Right.
It's totally normal. Now for us, we have urges normally it's not after breakfast. Okay. That's a different category. But after dinner or when coming home from work or whatever that is. So when you plan that 24 hours in advance, your executive brain typically does not write down. You write it down. Your executive brain typically does not say, I'm going to drink 2 bottles of wine tomorrow night.
No.
Right?
Right. Just not a good executive brain. Bad executive brain. Right.
There are exceptions, of course, but whatever. And so planning it ahead is important. And then you kind of review that before you start drinking. Like, why have I decided to drink this? Whatever it is, that's totally fine.
Right.
We're all adults here. You are allowed to drink whatever you want to drink.
Right, right.
The worst thing we can do is put restrictions on it, because then all of a sudden it's like, I want to rebel against it. And then what I advise my clients to do is think about that. It's really not as important the number of drinks that you put on there as it is, I want to become somebody who keeps his or her word to themselves.
Yes.
Like, that's why it's important.
Right.
Like, this is what I decided. This is what I want to stick to. And then after that, the next day you look at it and you say, was I able to stick to my plan? Why or why not? What was I thinking if I did? What was I thinking if I didn't? What can I learn from it? Right. Most people don't want to do that part. Right. Yeah.
But
I feel like there's gold there.
Yeah, there really is. Because if you can do that, you can do incredible other things, Right. I've always said that I don't want anything to have more control over me than I have of it. Yep. And so, I noticed that, with people who have addictions or, and what I find is that a lot of things can take that form, whether it's work, whether it's, kids, whether it's, and so I try to be very intentional about my life. And, you do as much as you possibly can. There's going to be things, there's going to be things that come up, but if you can be intentional, I like the intentionality about planning, what you're going to drink and how much of it, and being accountable. Because that goes back to that, letting something have control of yourself more than you do. Right. And so smoking, drugs, whatever that might be, alcohol falls right into that. So if you can be intentional with it, then you are controlling it. It is not controlling you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so often what I found is, that we are utilizing an external substance in order to basically buffer our negative emotions.
Absolutely.
Like I don't want to feel that urge. I don't want to feel the deprivation. I don't want to feel the boredom, whatever it is. I'm going to have a drink. And so recognizing that that's all internally generated.
Yeah.
Like those feelings are not coming from so-and-so pouring a drink.
Right.
That's coming from the interpretation that I have about it. And that's where it kind of goes into the mindset work, is like recognizing that we are taught how to apply critical thinking skills to other things, whether that be literature or art or whatever it is, or, you know, whatever. We are taught how to do that. We do not do that as a regular practice with our own thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We believe the thoughts that come into our head.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think so much of that, you know, when it comes to drinking, a lot of drinking is mindless. You know, it's not, it's, you know, when you're talking about like fine arts and the things that you were talking about, there's an appreciation for it in the moment. And with drinking, many times there's not, it's mindless. It's just, you know, it's habitual, or it's, you know, you're doing it while you're talking or while you're watching TV or watching a football game or whatever that is. But are you really enjoying that moment?
Right.
Or are you just mindlessly doing a habit?
Yep. Yeah. And to just to build on that point, it's like, I'm not thinking about, I'm believing the fact that because I grew up with, in a society that believes that drinking equals fun, that I can only have fun when I'm drinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so recognizing that that is not a universal truth.
Right.
And that I actually can and do have a life where I actually have more fun.
Yeah. And you're present for it, right? You're engaged and you're intentional.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I can wake up the next morning and feel great.
Yes, exactly. And we don't have all the wrinkles from dehydration.
Right.
So that's a good thing. All right. So that's really fascinating. So I'm sure you inspire people all the time in what you're talking about, because it is something that I feel like we all have this underlying, like, do I have a problem? Do I not have a problem? I like to enjoy a glass of wine at night before I go to bed, or, you know, or we justify it with, well, it's me time, you know, but, and I used to do that. Like, this is me time. This is time for me. And I want to enjoy a glass of wine. Well, you know, is it really for me? Because is it benefiting me? It's dehydrating me. It's calories.
Yeah.
You know, I'd probably get just as much enjoyment out of, you know, a little bit of ice cream or something else. But, you know, that me time could also be a bubble bath. You know, it could be something that doesn't involve alcohol.
Yeah.
And that's really genuinely paying yourself back with, you know, de-stressing is something that's good for you.
Right. Yeah. I like to think about it like finding activities, finding things that will feel good, not just while you're doing them, but afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, who inspires you? I know that, you know, you've inspired so many people through this process. I'm positive of that. So tell me, who inspires you?
I have a couple of mentors that I look up to. Brooke Castillo is she's the head of the life coach school, which is where I got my certification. So certainly her. And I will say, actually, my aunt Peggy, who's always been really special to me, I always looked up to her.
That's awesome. Okay, very cool. So as women, we often give our power away, whether that's to, you know, somebody who criticizes us or somebody who takes credit for something that we've done and we don't stand up for ourselves. Can you tell me about a time that you gave your power away and then another time that you stepped back into your power?
Yeah, I think that I can't think of a specific example, but I will tell. So I'm going to give you more of a macro situation.
Yeah.
I think that for me, for the longest time, I outsourced that feeling of validation to other people, whether that be parents or teachers or bosses or men in general. And outsourcing validation is highly perishable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because they decide to take it away, it crushes us.
Well, and even when they do give it, then we kind of don't even really believe it.
Right.
Like it just lands for a second.
Yeah.
Like, really? Are you, highly perishable. So once I figured out that was going on, that was going on and that I could do something about it, then I figured out that I could start telling myself that and believing that myself. So it starts with believing and then telling, right? Because when we just say random things and we don't believe that. And so I guess this is kind of funny, but I kind of have this image of aircraft carriers, they're totally self-sustainable, which isn't to say that I don't appreciate when other people do say nice things and all that kind of stuff. I'm not like living in an island by myself, but I like that idea that they can, it's self-fulfilling or, what do they call it? Like self-sustainable, I guess is what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. I can appreciate that very much.
And so that has felt, and I think that's what drew me to coaching to begin with, is that feeling that I was at the effect of all these things going on around me and these people that wanted things from me. And recognizing that once I started to really evaluate my own thinking, then all of a sudden it was like this, clouds parting kind of moment of, oh my gosh, I have more control than I thought I did.
Yeah.
I have more, like, I can own my experience a lot more. I don't have to be, and not like true victim. I'm not going to go down that path, but like a lot of times it's just easier to blame. Like, well, that's how I ended up here. And kind of rewriting that script of, I am, I made some choices. Maybe I agree with them. Maybe I don't, whatever. But I'm here today, who I am today because of that. And I love that. I love the power in that. And I love like being knowing that I've got my own back, knowing that I can go into any situation.
Yes.
And I'll be fine. I'll not only fine, I can thrive.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So, I was reading this thing earlier and, it really kind of resonates what you're saying with what I had heard earlier. And it's just that, our brain, our behavior is basically a symptom of whatever is underlying in our brain, right? So our behavior is the effect. It's not the cause, right? So if you're acting out, if you're drinking too much, if you're doing anything that is harmful, it's the effect. It's not the cause. Right. And so the more we can dive into why we do the things we do and what is the cause, that's when we can find peace. That's when we can find peace, and we're not using alcohol to mask, our feelings or to numb ourselves or to escape the day or, all of those things. And we are not using it as a crutch in a social situation. We have that confidence to have a conversation without feeling like we also need to be slightly buzzed to do it.
Right. They call it liquid courage.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and yet it really kind of, it does numb things, and it does just kind of takes us away from the experience.
Right.
I mean, and to your point earlier, so everything that we do, there are circumstances in the world, things happen, right? And like our brain takes that in and adds its interpretation to it.
Yeah.
And then however we're interpreting that is going to determine how we feel about it. And however we feel drives what we're going to do.
Yes. Yeah.
So for example, like so-and-so pours a glass of wine. If I look at that and think that I'm missing out, then I'm going to feel deprived.
Right.
So it's not the act of pouring the glass of wine. It is how I interpret that.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Well, and like with me, like I genuinely like the taste of wine. Like I genuinely enjoy the smell, the taste, because I have an appreciation for it. But if I'm drinking cheap, bad wine, just to do it, that's not appreciating that moment, right? And so if you just say, I'm only going to drink if this occasion calls for it, or if it's what I really want, right? If I can savor that moment. If I'm just at a party and they've got a bunch of stuff out on the counter and you're just randomly pouring and there's no rhyme or reason or appreciation for it, maybe just pour yourself a water. Maybe just say, this isn't really going to move me forward. Right. And so, it's similar to anything else. If I wanted to have a piece of chocolate, it's the same thing. I'm enjoying that piece of chocolate. But if I'm sitting here with, a bag of something in my hand and I'm just mindlessly eating, I'm not appreciating that moment either.
Totally. I'm cracking up that you're saying that because
yes,
there's all this Halloween candy in
right.
my mouth right now.
I
yes, so I can relate.
So, like I try, like I'll put like a couple little pieces of chocolate in my desk drawer, and that way it's like I'm not going to bring a bag of stuff up here, but if it's here, I'll have a piece and I'll enjoy it. But yeah, it's one of those things. Intentionality makes all the difference in the world. So definitely, your steps of planning it out and being intentional, and then just really just savoring it and enjoying it for what it is, versus doing it mindlessly, I think is the key, and not, like you were saying, the shitty parts of drinking, that's it's the over drinking.
It's the over drinking.
I went beyond enjoying it. And now I'm suffering as a result. Right.
And it's not just the physical suffering. It's also it's the mental beatdown that we give ourselves, which is awful.
Right.
If I'm so smart, why haven't I figured this out?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Or it's the, oh my God, did I make an ass out of myself? Oh, what did I say? Oh, did I behave badly? Oh, am I okay to drive, or should I call in, an Uber or Lyft or something? And so, it's all those decisions that are made after you start drinking that, if you just plan, I'm going to have a glass of wine. I know that I will metabolize, the average adult metabolizes, I think it's 1.5 glasses or 1.5 alcohol drinks per hour. Right. And so if you can stay on track with that, you should be okay. But if you are drinking faster than your body is metabolizing it, not a good situation. Right. And so, it's all about pacing and tracking and being intentional and understanding what it is that you're doing before you start doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say, like, to that point about beating up afterward, or, the inner mean girl is what I like to say is, I typically work with type A, high achieving women. And here's the thing, like our high standards that we utilize in order to succeed in business, in our careers, with our families, all that stuff, that comes back and hurts us when we are trying to drink less. Because we are the first ones to say, I got to do this better. I'm such an idiot, or, whatever that language is, right? I've got high standards. I need to be tough on myself. This works in other areas. What happens with drinking less is we eventually, like, our primitive brain kicks in, is like, we should have a drink and get rid of all this negative noise.
Right.
Here's your escape hatch to like, get rid of this. And so that becomes another neural pathway.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so recognizing that that's playing out, and that, is the first thing, because typically my clients will say, well, that, and it invalid, true. It has worked in other areas. Yeah. It doesn't work in this one.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Absolutely. So what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
So I love that you asked this, because I have a 17-year-old.
Yes.
That first and foremost, that you're not alone, and that everybody else around you feels like it's important to fit in as well. And that, so you're not alone, and yet you're a star. You are perfect and unique exactly the way that you are. And so don't try to smooth out the points of your star in order to fit into the round hole.
Oh, I love it. That's so good.
And so, like, live out your uniqueness, and it will all work out.
Yeah, I love it. That's great advice for your 17-year-old. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And alcohol is one of those things where I feel like we do to fit in. So yeah, absolutely. So what do you wish more people knew?
I wish that more people knew that you didn't have to have a drinking problem in order to get help.
Oh yeah, that's great.
It's okay to, what I found is that, because I don't work with alcoholics, I don't work in that arena.
Sure.
And I think that the distinction there is that, like, my clients know that they are not liking what results they're getting from their drinking, and they have tried a bunch of different things. They're not getting the traction that they're looking for. And so it's just similar to like, we bought a guitar a couple years ago and thought we were going to learn online and stuff like that. No, didn't happen. Still hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So if I had gotten a coach, if I'd gotten a instructor, I probably would have figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really it hasn't been a high priority. Maybe that's something I would pick up. I don't know. But it's just like with anything else that, people can definitely figure this out on their own. But if they have tried a number of different things and they're not getting the traction that they need, then, there are options other than just the abstinence only model of AA and rehab. And so that has really been my messaging. That's really been my ambition, is to create awareness that there are options.
Yeah.
That there are choices now.
I love that. Yeah. Because, not like I said, not everybody wants to completely quit. They don't feel like they have a drinking problem. Right. They just don't want, to feel horrible, and they don't want to overdrink. And there's nothing wrong with cutting back on all that. And, it really is just about taking those steps that you mentioned and really planning it out and being intentional about it, and making sure that you're being accountable to yourself. Because I love the accountability afterwards, because it really is. It's a reckoning, right? It's the, if this matters to me, why aren't I keeping my promises to myself?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we don't want to look, and I get that.
Yeah. Well, this has been really enjoyable. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation today.
I have too.
And I hope our audience is learning a lot.
Yeah, good. And I've got a free stopover drinking course. It's an email course that, any of your listeners are welcome to.
Okay. And how can they find that?
That is, I can give you the links.
Okay.
It's on my website. It's Caroline Holke coaching.com.
Okay.
So it's on there, but I'll give you the link to it. But it's just an email course so you don't have to sign up on a particular time or date or whatever. It's delivered to you.
Awesome.
And you can watch it as many times as you want.
Very cool. Well, I will make sure to put all that information on our website too. So thank you again, Caroline. This has been a pleasure. So thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of the Pretty Powerful Podcast. This is Angela Gennari, and all of Caroline Holke's information will be on the prettypowerfulpodcast.com. So please do check us out, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.
Thank you for joining our guests on the Pretty Powerful Podcast. And we hope you've gained new insight and learned from exceptional women. Remember to subscribe or check out this and all episodes on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Visit us next time, and until then, step into your own power.